Hello. Today we are going to dance with Elise Nuding. We met maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 a few years ago. You approached me because you were moving to Stockholm, I believe, and we discussed dance, the world and everything, but we have had seldom the opportunity to be in this dance studio together, which is one of the reasons why I've been wanting to do these podcasts, is because let's do it. Let's go into dance. Let's find that motivation to be in movement with each other. Because we always end up talking. But if people don't know you, how do you introduce yourself?
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course.
I don't know. I would usually, it depends on the context, to be honest, but I would often say I'm an artist, researcher. I work with dance and choreography and writing. I also have a background with archaeology and landscape studies, so those things filter through still. So I've been moving between a lot of different spheres, but I like the term artist researcher with a hyphen.
Yeah, we always have really fascinating conversations which have like a nice breadth to them. And so what are we gonna do today?
We're going to work with our backspace, which is something that I've been busy with, or like keep coming back to, I guess since maybe 2 or 3 years now, I'm not sure, but a few years anyway, both in like my own improvisational practice, or as a foundation for some of the works I've made, but also a lot in my teaching, which is also nice because it gives opportunities to work with a similar thing, but rethinking how I'm framing it. So we're going to work with our backspace.
And by backspace, is that like the kinesthetic? I guess that's going to be what the task is.
I mean, I would usually introduce it or describe it as it's the skin of all of the body's back surfaces, and then the space that extends from the skin.
Yeah, Elise was just now touching your arms, like with the other arm from the hand and round to the back of the shoulder.
Yeah.
Very, very beautiful.
And the thing that is a little bit maybe tricksy about it is, of course, it depends how, if I twist my arm, then a different surface is then
backwards.
Back, yeah, so rather than a fixed kind of anatomical surface, it's, I guess, more relative or
conceptual even.
But there's, the back of the skull is always going to be the back, because it is also relative to the frontal, right? But the crucially, it's not just the skin, right? It's the skin, but also, like you said, the kinesphere extending beyond. But how far it extends that's part of what we'll work with, or it can be different. Sometimes maybe it only extends a couple of centimeters. Sometimes it's, I don't know, kilometer. So in terms of kind of concrete, practical instructions or some kind of a score, then we're going to take about 20 minutes to do this. It could be shorter or longer, but that's the time frame I chose for today. And we will begin by physically, texturally activating the back surfaces of the body, and this can be with like your couch or the floor, of course, or the wall, or if you have other people or beings in your space who are open to being involved, you can also use touch.
So really to touch something with the backspace.
Right, the back surfaces of the body. So we start with the skin. So it's, it could be like as simple as I just did, like just rubbing the back of your shoulder blade, or kind of Yeah, I mean a little bit like a cat or a bear or something, like finding your tree to rub against. So anything that kind of appeals and is within other people's acceptable boundaries. But yeah, just bring some sensation and some texture and some sensation to the skin. And then the next, so that's the first stage. And these stages can take as long as you like. Maybe you spend 19 minutes in the first stage, that's fine. But then the next phase is then to start moving through the space somehow, however you want, in whatever speed or whatever level or anything. But just to start to kind of tune into the sense of, as you move through space, your back space also moves. Mm-hmm. And it can be, in this stage, it can be very nice, or I will definitely do this, to move backwards, so to move into the backspace.
Yeah.
And we spend some time with that, and it's so then I like to formulate for myself a color, a texture, and a temperature of the backspace today. Nice. Right, yeah. This might be different every day or in the afternoon from the morning. But so what color, what temperature, what texture or density is the backspace of the day.
Yeah.
And then the next phase is to dance with it, whatever that means. Maybe you continue doing one of the first two phases, or maybe you go back to one of them also. It's not... you can definitely go back into the first or the second stage. But then you have this kind of activated backspace with its color, its texture, and its temperature to move with, to dance with, to experience.
And can you move between the different phases?
Yeah.
So you can go back into texture, feeling the texture of the space, and then jump straight into dancing, maybe, and then go into traveling through the backspace.
Absolutely.
And into the backspace.
Yeah.
And then we have sort of that hook at some point, find what today's color, texture, and temperature is. Nice.
Yeah, and if you don't find it, it's also fine.
Yeah. yeah.
But,
or maybe you think it's one thing,
right.
and then you discover, wait a minute.
And it can be an exercise of the imagination, right? Like, my backspace doesn't feel blue, but what if it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And so this is also an invitation to go into contact as well.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
I think that's clear. We've got the 3 stages. First, start by feeling, by touching things with the backspace, be it people or the room. Then we have the possibility to start moving into the backspace, traveling, and finding a color, texture, and temperature, density, and then finally allowing it to dance somehow. And today we're going to try for 20 minutes. So we'll see you in a minute. Thank you so much. That was really pleasurable. I feel so warm.
Right.
You said, I feel sweaty now.
Yeah.
But
on this cold January day.
It is a cold day. But I was thinking how, that this practice, let's say, it like warms me up in so many different ways. I had to think about, because I didn't warm up this morning. I don't know, did you?
No.
And then think about, like, what do I do when I warm up, you know? Whereas this does something else. I'm not like stretching each muscle and like getting the blood pumping in like I'll use my big muscle groups to try and like move as much blood as possible. It's more like subtle, and it has so much to do with that feeling of finding new directions and challenging my patterns maybe whilst moving, that somehow like bypasses the conventions of warming up and makes my body feel more fluid and sort of like available. I feel like like some sort of jelly or
Nice.
It's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know how you, well, I saw a little bit, but I don't know what you were actually doing in the first phase. But I mean, this time, and I guess like often, like I create quite a lot of pressure, like pressure between my flesh and maybe the wall, or there's always pressure between the flesh and the floor because of gravity, but you can like create extra. And I think about it as like actively trying to get warm, but I think there's something about the pressure, and then maybe like you say, having to then like negotiate what you then do with that, or directions, and
it's like a full body massage.
Yeah.
And there's something about, or maybe I'm asking actually, of like there's a pressure between different parts of the body that one is like discovering.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because like depending on the angle, say I put my back against the wall, I can put pressure onto different joints and different muscles and different bones and organs, of course.
And organs. Yeah, and I guess just as you're talking, I'm thinking also, as soon as there's pressure, there's also direction, because you have to actively like create and maintain a direction in order to otherwise you would just slide down the wall, or in this example to the floor. But but I mean, I was also doing a lot of stuff that was very like not thick and pressured, like just kind of rubbing the surface of the skin, or like creating sensation by moving through the air and stuff. So
I think that I forgot to do that. I could use my hands, presumably, to like actually massage and actively touch my body. I think the next time I do this, I will try to actively think of that, because I kept on looking for objects.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I've got an I've got an itch to scratch. What is the thing in the room that's going to scratch that itch?
Yeah.
Like, oh, a door handle. But when I really, I could also have used my own body. But also then there's something I wanted to bring up about how it feels like the different phases, they overlap. Like you say, like when one starts to put pressure on the different body parts, directionality comes into play. And the next phase is direction, in a way, to transverse across space and into the backspace. And then when one starts, at least I found, when I started to transverse across space, I was asking myself, what am I putting through space? Is it an arm? Is it a back? Is it a leg? Like, what parts of me? Is it the whole part of me? And because of that maybe modality of thinking of like passing different body parts, I was already like, okay, I'm dancing. It's happening.
Yeah. Did you I didn't say this as like an explicit part or like phase, but the experience of moving backwards for a longer time than we might usually do it, maybe 5 minutes or something. I didn't say like that it's an important part that you only move backwards for that time, because I chose not to do that. But like we were both moving into the backspace a lot, and I'm curious if like the experience of moving, even if it's an arm or like the back of the knee or like the vertebrae, moving back, like what that does. Or if it did anything.
I mean, it definitely, I started to have like taboos of like, oh, am I allowed to experience my front?
Right.
Am I allowed to move forward? And I was looking for like ways to understand how a backwards movement can have a forward movement in it. So, so say like my right shoulder's going back, then my left shoulder's maybe going forward, because it's actually a rotation around the spine, perhaps, or something like that. But I think there's definitely becomes like an awareness, which I don't normally have. Like I change like a sense of like aspects of like what's possible, and I think that's maybe where that new directions quality that I was maybe speaking about earlier comes in, is that because I'm not used to moving only backwards for so long, then I start to recognize different pathways and different initiations and potentials. Like sometimes I would get stuck. At some point we were in contact or between a wall and stuff, and I'd get stuck with like, oh, how do I negotiate this? And actually thinking about the back supported me finding a way out of it, or a way which was less like conventional.
Yeah.
What?
I'm just thinking of like all the kind of social language metaphors of like sneaking out the back door, like kind of
yes.
like like kind of
exactly
sliding away, or kind of extracting oneself, rather than you could also extract yourself by moving forwards, but somehow it socially, linguistically, it's like another thing to be like and just kind of slide out backwards.
I guess there's so much in like acting that has to do with forwardness, right? Like I'm going to do something, I put my best side forwards, my face front. I stand in attention. Like there's a quality of that, like to act I need to be forward, whereas or just in life also. Maybe. Yes. Right.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of like bodily spatial. They're not metaphors, or they maybe are metaphors, but metaphors in a very concrete, like it affects the way we think, in terms of like we think of in Western culture, we think of the past being behind us. Something she's left it behind her. She's moved on. She's moved forward, right? And the front is where you're going, and that's not always the case. There's some, I believe, indigenous cultures in South America that the past is in front of you because it's what you see and what you know, and the future is what you don't know, what you don't see. And but going back to so there's like a whole bunch of the way that we think about body orientations, and like you said, putting your best foot forward.
Exactly.
Stepping up. You could step up backwards also, I guess. But I just going back to because what you said now, or one of the things you said was thinking about or exploring or experiencing how if you move, if you're moving back in some way, maybe there's some forward movement that's also occurring. And I'm quite interested in, or I just become very interested almost every time, I guess, that I do this, in like the experience of the front whilst moving back. So it's not that I have to be moving forward to experience the front, which is not what you said, but maybe could be
definitely
implied from what you said. But actually that I am moving backwards, but what is the experience of the front space then? Or the front and the front space. And sometimes, I'm not sure if it happened this time because there were so many other parameters now. But sometimes I have a sense of, when you see something but you don't really see it, like you're looking at the clock and then you look away and you're like, what time was it? Like you just don't register what you see. And it is kind of that that feeling, because I'm seeing, but now I'm going to say sensing the front, but it's like I'm not really, because I'm sensing the back space so much. And that's where the focus is, and it's kind of that, we always have that doubleness, but we're so dominated by the front space that maybe we don't really register that we have that doubleness, or maybe we don't have it at all. So to shift it is like I don't know, I usually think about it like this image. Now I have my two hands like a scale that's unbalanced, and this is the front space,
the top one,
and then it's just rebalancing the scale. So it's not that it's all about the backspace.
No,
I mean it is, but our eyes are in the front. Like we're so frontal in the way that we orient and negotiate space, organize. So it's just like rebalancing slightly. But the body is three-dimensional. This is also kind of dualistic.
I know.
But it's kind of a nice dualism for once, I think.
Yeah. But could it also be like something to do with choice making? Improvisation suggests that it's about choice, making choices. And there's something about exchanging one's attention and places of choice to the back that makes it feel less like a choice. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just like speculating a little bit. Like there's something about when we act, when we try to, when we make a decision, we do it frontally. This is what I'm doing. I'm presenting it through my front space. Like I'm almost trying to imagine that maybe backspace also performs itself in us as a potentiality for like performativity of decision making. That by recognizing, because you're right, it's not like we are three-dimensional and it's not completely binary either. I can start to understand my front as my back in a way, because where does it begin and where does it end? There is like, within the exploration, there's this potential for that. But
right, and the skin is a continuous surface that continues also to the inside surfaces.
Yeah,
right?
there's organs, there's the front of the spine,
stop.
there is the, there's all the complexity of the anatomy. So where do you draw this arbitrary line? But then beyond that, like just by providing this conceptual space through which to think about how we, or to be with how we make decisions normally, rather than putting them forward, but to put them back, not to put a proposal on the table, but to put it behind the table. Like there's a quality there, which because it reminds me of in improvisation, that thing of where you feel carried by the situation. Your choice making isn't explicit in your cognitive function. It has that, like, you feel relaxed, but at the same time you are being creative and you are making choices, but they're not representing themselves perhaps as like, now I'm making a statement. Now I am making a choice. I'm going to wear the blue wig and stand in the middle of the stage and do a pirouette. It's more like, through the back door, I've discovered X, Y, Z, and I can stand behind them, but I'm not standing behind them.
I have two thoughts on that, or not on that, but based on what you said. So one thought is a question, which is, do you think that has something to do with an increased survival mode? Because we can't see what's behind us without turning our, literally see, without turning our head. And that was never something that was forbidden or not allowed. But there's also, if you're moving with the back of your skull into space, then you're not seeing where you're moving towards, for example. And there's we're less adept at dealing with organizing the body moving backwards. It's like, I don't want to trip on something. Whoops, there's the wall. And so, my foot is like managing, but it is like not as used to taking weight through the toes, arch, heel, simple things like this. So there's maybe like an increased, or I think this, what do you think? But like there's maybe an increased sense of like you're in kind of low intensity survival mode. Which then would become more high intensity if you were gonna like fall backwards or something like this.
Definitely there is we are built to see things from the front. We're built to present ourselves in that direction and to protect ourselves, like by protecting our back, in a way. I maybe to speak to it a little bit, I was trying to close my eyes at some moments and wanting to, and I was noticing how I needed my eyes to be able to move backwards, which I felt was really like a sort of interesting tension, because maybe that's what you were describing earlier, that you're moving into your back, but your front is still relevant. You're seeing it, you're sensing it.
Experiencing, yeah.
And I felt something similar, that even though I am trying to be in the places I can't see, I felt like I still needed to see to be in the places I can't see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like that. The other thought that I had, based on what you said, was also about when our backspaces then met in like physical skin contact, or like skin clothes contact also, then because it depends how sometimes I have the image of like kind of light beams of the backspace, so it depends like how what's the right word, what the extent of your backspace sensing space is. Like, can I sense something that's 2 meters behind me, or is it only a few centimeters that I am able to like activate and work with? So backspaces can overlap before we are in physical contact, but then especially when you are in physical contact, then just going back to what you said about the decision making, then it's like okay, now we've, what's the word, like exponentially increase the complexity of the situation, right?
Yes.
In terms of like, where can I go, like, or what choices do I have? When we are in physical contact, it's like we're both making choices, and then it's like, then there are also things happening, I'm going to say, between us because of the choices we make, that then could be experienced as neither a choice that neither of us made.
Exactly.
And that can happen with a wall, but it happens much more, or is much more available with another sensing living human being.
True. I was going to describe it as like having, because the back becomes actually a limitation to the potential space one can move in, because you can't go through the body. A bit like the wall, right? You can't go through it. However, you're right, there is something that increases the possibility, because the nuance maybe, or the complexity of direction becomes increased. Whereas when I'm just with all possibilities, no one's behind me, nothing's behind me, I tend towards quite simplistic routes and pathways. Whereas when I'm with something that is also negotiating that backspace, I have like limited options, which feels like I have new options. There's something very like potential producing by having that limitation somehow. And how do you experience dance when it arises? Because it's one of those big words, isn't it? That because we know that the first phase could be dance, and we know that the second phase could be dance, but then we have the third phase which says, and then you can dance. So what is the additional allowance or affordance that is sort of given there? Is it to say that now you don't have to be with the first and second phase? You can be with anything but.
Yeah, it's a great question. And one I often have for myself. Like, what do we mean when we say, okay, now you can dance? Or no, but I think, so my answer today in relation to this proposal would be that it's what can happen when you've basically organized your toolbox right, in the right way, and the right way for that day, for that person, not objectively right. In other words, create like the things before create the conditions. So then if we switch it, then the dancing then would be defined by you've done whatever you need to do to create the right conditions. It doesn't really answer the question, because you could say like the conditions for what then? A dance. What do you mean by that, right? So we could, get stuck in that argument or like illogic circle, but then maybe the dancing is then defined by something about the way that a shift in the way that you experience yourself and yourself in space and time. Because the first phases could absolutely be a dance.
Yeah.
But then I would say then that means that maybe without knowing it, you did whatever you needed to do to create the conditions for that before we started,
yes.
before you came into the room, or so.
Has it some?
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe because has it somewhat to do with, because dance is whatever we're relating to as dance. Like if we give it the most broad definition. Has it something to do with now you've taken these paths less trodden, let's say, backwards into spaces, into backs, other people's backs, with the diverse possibilities that maybe weren't recognized before, then to give you the permission then to try and appreciate where you found yourself as dance, to start to connect these experiences, these shapes, movements, dynamics, qualities, patterns, bodies, within your understanding of what dance could be, or is.
Absolutely. Like attention and intention.
Yeah.
And shifts in those two. Like shifts in both attention and shifts in intention. And then there's some kind of intersection or like overlapping space that then is dancing, but like that could also be defined differently by different people, of course. I mean, because what I don't think it is, or what I don't think it has to be, it doesn't have to be this like state of flow or like streaming consciousness like that, or at least I would say that's like a specific type of a space to be in a dance, which is really pleasurable and like very delicious, I think. But you don't have to have like obtained that to be dancing.
Yeah.
And like probably realistically, it's probably like it works in the sense of like maybe you have small glimpses of like milliseconds within a 20-minute dance of that kind of more flow experience. Like realistically, that's probably how it shows up more than like, oh, now you're in something. So definitely to just, that is not a prerequisite or a part of the definition of what I would say dancing is, but it like it's something that can be part of the dancing.
There's something very collective, I think, what comes out of your proposal for me of and with all these questions around choice making and the different things that have sort of come up, because as I move into these spaces which I'm less familiar with, and these movements that I'm less familiar with, and they become products of the conditions that I'm with, be it the re-understanding of my anatomy, as you sort of described, of the body in backwardsness, the meeting with the room, the people in the room, the responsivity of the person that one finds himself with, that then I find a new identity there or something, or like an ability to...
But now because the part of our dance, now that what you just said kind of conjured up for me in my mind's eye, was towards the end when we were like both pressed into the wall and kind of pressing each other into the wall.
Corner,
and then into the corner, exactly. But it like went on for quite a long time. Yeah. But that and why did that come to mind? Not really sure, but there's that we went back to the wall to kind of get on kind of a body conscious level more than a decision-making improvisation level, to kind of get back to some of that like sense, very kind of concrete information in the flesh of like pressure, and but this time with like two bodies, and then backspace and front space, or kind of both and neither or sometimes also. And I'm jumping a little bit, but there was also, I also at some points talking about attention and intention, I also shifted my intentions at points in the dancing to between like being more with my backspace, or kind of investigating, exploring what that was today, and then sometimes really being like, or shifting focus to your backspace. And like, where is Peter's backspace extending to now? Like, can I feel it even though I'm 2 meters away, or if I place my hands on your spine, like what does that do, you know, for my own sense of my own backspace also, and yours, and everything.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And the moving into your backspace, or moving away, or some mix of the two, or
But it reminds me of what I was trying to say of like, there's a collectivity to dance. And like what you're saying, that this pressure, this meeting, and it is so complex. It's like, it's annoying how difficult it is to describe, which is a little bit the irony of this task of let's make a podcast, a verbally described exploration of dance. But hopefully people at home can get the opportunity to mix with it. But it brings me back to like, there was a final task. It's sort of hidden amongst the practice, which was the color, temperature, texture, density, which is an act of somehow trying to articulate this complexity, this pressure, this meeting, this cooperation, this collaboration between things and bodies.
Energetic nuances.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe I can share mine, and then you can share yours.
Great.
I would say mine was a sort of orangey red today. Like when I was describing feeling warm, I think I was directly in that place, and I spoke of jelly, but it's not quite jelly, maybe like a thick lava, like or molten glass type thing. And then that's also where the redness is, so sort of has a similarity. And then the temperature obviously is hot.
How could it be otherwise?
And that sort of density of like it's not liquid, it's not solid, it's almost like somehow in between. How about you? Where did you land on? I had a kind of a clear color and texture / density. I was a bit unsure about the temperature, and then, which I will say what it was, but then I also later in the dance I had a question for myself. I was like, wait, has it changed? And I wasn't sure because it didn't quite feel the same, but I also didn't feel any other kind of But so for me it was a kind of like milky white, kind of pearly, like a bit, what's it called, iridescent kind of color, but that's also kind of already a texture. Definitely.
Like, and I went, or I was like, it was kind of a, what's the word, like, so hard. Thicker than milk or water. But like, I think that like pearly iridescent, like it has to be a bit thicker to be that. Somehow. But it was also quite like thin in the space, like, I don't know, silky somehow. Not heavy and thick and kind of not viscous like yours. But like somehow a light, like a liquid that doesn't weigh much. This is not possible, but you know. This is how it felt. And then, but temperature, I was like, not sure. So I think now I'm reflecting after, I didn't think this at the time, but then I'm thinking, maybe it was kind of the room temperature then. Like it wasn't I didn't have a strong sense of something being colder or warmer than than where I was, or my temperature. It's funny. I had like have such a clear sense of what it was, and then was not at all easy to put words on it. Languaging. Yeah.
It feels like the topic of our discussion.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's where I want to sort of start to conclude and say, like, I know, I hope, I am invested in, I really want to do this more, because I really appreciate us being able to have the moment to put words on these experiences and to find these experiences together as well. Like, they feel really rich and complex and beautiful and warm and really rewarding, motivating. I don't know, I'm not getting the right words again, but I am really grateful for you to do this with me, and I hope people at home have also managed to maybe participate in some way, have found some types of experiences which speak to our poor articulations, or at least my poor articulations of what happened. But also they can attend, you teach contact impro or lead contact impro. You are also working at the Gothenburg University. Where else can people find you, be with you, get in touch with you, dance with you? Where are you?
Right now, those two contexts are my most relevant, actual. But otherwise, I mean, I am working with and dancing for other makers and choreographers, although I maybe don't want to say exactly which ones right now, because things are always being penciled in and planned. But
people can see you perform.
Yeah, basically. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I do also have a work that I made and was shown in last August, which might show up at some other places, hopefully, but nothing confirmed yet. But there's a lot of language, there's a lot of texture, there's a lot of backspace also in that.
How do people get in touch with you to like attend the contact impro jams? And
I'm sorry to say that Facebook is the best way.
No, it's great.
But that's where a lot of the contact impro community information is shared and exchanged.
And that's your name on Facebook.
Or you can write to me directly, which is my name on Facebook is Elise Mae. That's my middle name, Elise Mae Nuding. Or Instagram is also great, and there's more pictures there.
Yeah.
And that one is Elise M Nuding.
Yeah. And I will link them all in the description, so people have like a physical place, but as well. Anywhere else you're trying to...
Yeah, I'm thinking.
But you can always let me know after, and I can add them. But thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a delightful pleasure.
A real pleasure. And we'll do it again.
Great.